Yo, what is up, guys? My name is Minter, and today we're going to be talking about whether or not you should be picking up a second stream PC. Let's talk about it. So I'm hoping to have this video done in one sitting. No kind of editing or clipping or anything like that. Just straight out. Just let's talk about it. Um, I suppose this is from my experience as well. I've only recently moved to a dual stream PC setup. What we mean by that is we have one desktop PC for gaming and the other one dealing with our stream, which is essentially encoding the packets that are then sent to the streaming platform of choice. In my case, it's Mixer. It used to be Twitch. I'm not going to talk about that though. I suppose there's a couple of things I want to kind of call out, that things maybe you haven't considered or are, I suppose just looking for additional advice on whether or not you should be looking at getting a second PC to do that. It's literally it's situational. It all depends on your situation. That's the crux of it. Unfortunately, talk a little bit about the pros and cons. Pros obviously being the game that you're playing will not be the gaming experience won't be worse than what you're used to. Trying to think of the words. Essentially, the performance of the game would not be impacted. Usually, if you have one PC doing both the gaming and the encoding or the streaming, the game FPS will drop, and that is usually how people FPS is the main thing, right? Depending on what game you're playing. If you're sitting and playing Hearthstone and things like that, you probably won't even need a second PC. It's unlikely your game experience is going to be that degraded that you're thinking of getting a second PC. Whereas if you're playing GTA 5 ultra settings, if you're playing FPS games, playing competitive games, you're probably you would 100% see the benefit of having a second PC to do that work. I'm not going to talk too much about the detail of it in terms of the streaming aspect. There are loads of videos out there in terms of how you can use the second PC to stream. There's NVENC new graphics card. There's the software X264, which is CPU. Essentially, the main con of having a second PC to do that is cost. Not I suppose cost could be not just monetary, but your time. So it's a second PC that you have to maintain and manage. The setup of it can take a bit of time depending on how technical you are. If you're not too sure, it's a lot of research, looking at videos, that kind of stuff to figure out how and what method you should be using. Though I suppose the one I use in terms of the method of being able to take what I see on my gaming stream, my gaming PC, and putting it across my streaming PC is something called NDI, which is totally free to use. It's essentially it uses it's a piece of software that sits on both your PCs, and it sends the data, so your game capture, your game display, or your audio across your local area network, so across your LAN. The downside to that is there's no real downside. What you need is a gigabit network, so you need to be able to send data from one PC to the other at gigabit connection. If you're sitting at 10 meg, 100 meg kind of connection, that won't be an option for you. Unfortunately, it will require you to either have a router that has gigabit LAN ports on them. You'll need at least two, one for each of your PCs. You could, if your router is not doesn't have gigabit Ethernet, gigabit ports on the back of the router, you could utilize a gigabit switch and just have that so you'd have your router plugged into your gigabit switch, and then you'd have your two PCs plugged into the switch. There's different ways of doing it. I don't want to get into detail of the concepts, but there's lots of YouTube videos and stuff out there for it. I suppose the other method is a capture card. You could totally go on the capture card method, but obviously the downside to that is the cost. You need to go and buy a capture card, and those things can be quite expensive depending on what you need. So if it's 4K, 1080p, 60 FPS, whatever, the cost will range. It could be between £50 to £150, £200. It purely depends on what your requirements are. I would I suppose if you're not too concerned about the cost, and and you have the money, then I'd strongly recommend going for it. 100%. The value you get from it, the stream quality is much higher. It doesn't have the negative experience of lower frames and things when you're playing your games. It's awesome. The other thing to consider is your mouse and keyboard input. So the way some people do it is they plug in the mouse and keyboard into the second PC, which then means you then have a second mouse and a second keyboard sitting on your desk, which I wanted to avoid. I didn't want that experience. I ended up using an application called ShareMouse. There's a bunch out there, and essentially what it does is use your LAN, uses your local area network again, and it sends your mouse and keyboard input from one PC to the other over your network. It's really good, really flawless. There's loads of applications out there that do that. So that's one thing you could utilize. Be great if you could share your experience of moving. So if you went from one PC to two, please share your comments and your thoughts in the chat. If you have any questions or are still not too sure whether or not you should be considering it or not, ping me a Twitter DM, ping me a comment in the chat below, and I'll respond as soon as I can. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Conscious that wasn't there wasn't too much of the video. I try to keep it nice and short and sweet, but I suppose it's just to get you thinking about do you need two PCs? Just because I suppose it's cheaper to do it now, 2019, than it was 5-6 years ago. So that's the other thing to consider as well. It's much more feasible to do it nowadays than you could way back when I first started streaming. So that's something else to consider. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.